Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Drop a Stitch podcast.
I'm your host, Natalie.
And I'm your other host, Denny.
And today we're talking about everything that you need to include in a pattern to make it great.
To make it great, to make it perfect. Or,
as close as can be.
How was your week?
It was good. Work, a ton of meetings, but
yeah. Same over here.
Yeah, you're fully back into the swing of things now.
Yes, I'm trying to get better. I'm trying to get organized and, finding time here and there, with two little ones. What can you do? But, I've been trying to do my best. Today was super, Isa took a 2-hour nap and Kel decided to take Luca out. So I had those 2 hours, the most productive 2 hours ever. I recorded so many little videos for reels and things for Instagram. Then I did my makeup and I took pictures and a video of a pattern that I'm releasing this week. It was just so productive in only 2 hours. I was like, okay, this is great. Can we do this every day?
Yes.
But just busy and
time moves quick.
Yeah, I know. It's just so crazy. Time goes by so fast.
Oh, yeah.
And then we're here again talking about our week, and I feel like we did this yesterday.
Yeah, we blinked and
I know.
Oh, a week has gone by. How was your week? Same as last week. I don't know.
I know I didn't do anything new besides...
Yeah.
But okay, we're gonna get into the videos. Into the video. I'm so used to recording voiceover and doing this for my videos, and I also have memorized everything that I say in a video.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, let's get into the video.
No. Let's get into the podcast episode.
Let's get into today's episode. Okay, it's tired. We're tired.
It's
okay?
tired.
It's tired. Okay, I can't talk. We're tired. It's late at night, and we're doing this.
Life's busy. You record
for you guys.
podcast episodes at 10 p.m.
I know. Well, this is the only time that we don't have kids screaming.
Yes.
So
We don't really have a choice.
Yep. Okay, so we're gonna start.
Yes.
With what makes a pattern a good pattern.
Yeah. Well, to start, you need a title or a name for your pattern.
Yeah. Do you feel like it's gotta be like a catchy name, or it doesn't matter?
I don't think it really matters.
No, it's more like personal.
Yeah, I think it's more personal. I think the most important is to find a name that no one else has used, or as little as possible. I always when I say always, I've released a ton of patterns. I have not. I have multiple that I need to release. But when I pick a name for my patterns, I typically will search the hashtag on Instagram and search a name on Pinterest and see if something comes up. If I can see that sometimes it's random, but sometimes it's this same hat just keeps popping up. So clearly that's the name of it. So I'm going to find a different name.
Yeah. For me, oh my gosh, it's so hard to find a name.
Yeah.
I don't use anything in particular. I just whatever kind of suits the pattern too. If I have something special about the pattern or something or somebody that I made it for example, Andrew's blanket. Andrew's the name of my mother-in-law. So, it was made for her. So it just fit. It was meant to be. No.
Yeah. It was just easy
to... It was easier to just call it that because it had, a purpose. But besides that, it's so hard. I just try to find whatever comes to my mind.
Yeah. I applaud people that... Some people have really great pattern names and you're like...
Yeah.
But I find a lot of people too will find themes. Yeah. And that helps then. You have a theme or a collection and then you do all the patterns and it's I'm thinking the flax sweater, she has a bunch of other patterns in that same collection that is free, but it's all flax, rye, it's all types of whatever it is, grain, wheat, whatever. Yeah. So it's once you start with one thing, it's easy to just okay, the next, yeah. Right?
And it also, I've seen people using 2 words, almost like a little phrase for the name. And to me, it's just so hard to come up with something like that. I have to find one name.
Yeah.
I'm like, I need one name and make it easy to write, make it easy to remember.
You also have the added challenge that you typically will do your patterns in Spanish and in English.
Yeah.
So you need to find a name that kind of fits both.
Yeah, I usually tend to do English names, but then I see all the Malabrigo yarn, and they are a Spanish company.
Mm-hmm.
They have all their yarn with Spanish names. Even Malabrigo is a Spanish word.
Really? What does it mean?
Yeah, it's two words. They just combine it.
Okay.
So it's Malabrigo means like bad dressed.
Okay.
You know, like abrigo is like a very heavy sweater.
Okay.
So if you said malabrigo, you mean like you're not dressed properly.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
So even that, and they have so many cool names, and I'm like, why don't I use Spanish names?
You should. Then it would be
so
easy,
nice.
and like no one in like the English would have those
no
already.
one in the English community will have them. I
you
know.
should.
I'm like, why don't I do that? I don't know.
I don't think it would prevent people from finding or like buying your patterns.
No.
I like sometimes I buy patterns. I'm like, what is this name? Like, why?
Oh yeah, in other language that is not even English or Spanish.
Yeah, sometimes and sometimes it's even in English, and I'm like, really? Like, play on words. It's like,
I know.
Done with that, but it's fine. If it made you smile while you did it, then do it.
Yeah,
like, it's cool.
Okay, next we have the description.
Yes. It's always nice when you are looking at a pattern or buying a pattern to have a little kind of explanation of how it's worked.
Okay, so these will be in the listing.
The listing, but I find it fun to have in the pattern as well. Like, we all buy patterns or like pin patterns or do whatever.
Yeah.
And then don't touch them for years and then randomly find them and are like, oh yeah, I bought this like 3 years ago. Let me make it now. So like, yeah.
Guilty.
We're all guilty of this. So when I really appreciate when there's a description in the pattern, because I'm like, oh yeah, let me make this. And then you read it, it's like, okay, it worked in the round, then worked back and forth to do this. And then, and you're like, okay, like instantly before you even read the pattern, you kind of already know where you're going.
Yeah.
Whereas sometimes if you read a pattern for something that you have no idea, like, is it, starting from the bottom, from the top, from the left, from the right, like, what is happening?
Yeah.
It can be a little confusing. So.
I think especially if it's a pattern a little bit more, not complicated, but not like a hat, for example. You can say that it's worked in the round.
Or like a blanket, you kind of know how it's done. Mm-hmm. But if it's worked like a sweater, is it like, different pieces that are assembled? Is it worked in the round? Is it like, But I mean, even a hat, like you have hats where it's like in the round and you have hats where it's like knit flat and then assemble or crochet flat.
Who does that nowadays?
I know. We don't like those people. But
no.
To get certain styles, you kind of don't have to though. But yeah, so a description is always fun. Like typically when you buy the listing, but it's always great when it's in the pattern so you can refer back to it.
Yeah. Let's make a little pause. I want to ask you, whenever you are writing the description in your listing, whether it's on Etsy or, in Ravelry, you have to, but not everybody likes to give away the needle or hook size that you're using and some materials to keep it, not to keep it intricate, but for other people to not be like, oh, okay,
so
she's
easy
using
to copy.
Oh, okay, so she's using that size needle with
and that yarn. Let me figure. Yeah, no, I agree with you. I don't typically like share that information.
Yeah.
But if someone's like, hey, I want to do this, I just want to make sure I have the tools or whatever, then.
Yeah.
I mean, they can find it if they really search. They can go on Ravelry and find it. So at that point, I'm just like, yep, it's this hook.
Yeah.
And and I'll typically, if they ask, I share. I don't just give it for fun to give it because it just makes it easier for people that want to copy the pattern.
Yeah. It's just so hard nowadays to try to keep things not like private, but so that people won't copy you before. What happened to me most of the times is that, do I want to share what I'm working on?
Mm-hmm.
Because I know I'm not going to finish it within, I don't know, like a week or two, let's say. And then what if somebody comes
and kind of steals the idea and does it before you.
And then it's like, well, but that just takes the fun out of like sharing what I'm working on and asking people's opinion if they like certain things. And it's like, I can't.
But at the same time, you posted about it like way before this person would have released their patterns. So
yeah, I think about that too. I'm like, okay, I'm publishing these stories or reels or whatever, so it's there that I did it before. I shouldn't give a crap. But sometimes, you know, your mind just plays hard, that, and you're like, oh, but I don't want. This is too good for me to like, you know, give it away.
Just give it away. And it's shitty that we even have to think about it.
I know.
It's so shitty. And that's like why our next episode, we're going to talk about how to know if you're copying someone and if you're actually
how to know if you are heavily inspired by
AKA
somebody
copying
else's.
someone. Or if it's your own inspiration and you're just creating something.
Yeah. Okay, so we have the title, we have the description. Now we have materials
and tools. So anything and everything you will need to make the pattern, from the yarn to the hook and needle size to the length of the circular needles if that's what you're using, to scissors and darning needles, to stitch markers and what kind of stitch markers you need. Are they locking stitch markers? Are they like ring stitch markers? The quantity of yarn is also very important. I hate patterns where you can tell that there's multiple colors and it's like one skein of each.
I
like,
know.
No.
I have done that before.
You have done that before, I know. You're like, no. There's one that has like 3 rows. The whole hat is made with one color and then there's 3 rows of the other color. You don't need a whole skein. I want to know how much so that I can weigh the little scraps I have left.
I know. Well, the thing is, for me, this is like before.
Yeah.
Well, that was annoying. I'm sorry. I was trying to put my watch in silence mode, and I ended up doing the opposite. I'm sorry. Anyways, so I did that before because I couldn't figure. I wanted to do patterns so bad, but then I couldn't figure it out how to say how much yarn I used.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
The easiest trick: weigh each ball of yarn before you start. Weigh them at the end. You know how much you used, even though your project is full of colors.
I know, but that, you know, you just know that after multiple times.
I would say, honestly, like writing patterns, and I'm not kidding, this is why 2 of my patterns right now I haven't done anything with, because I haven't weighed them.
Oh, no.
I don't know how much yarn I used, and I've already, like, put the tag and put the pom-pom, so I can't weigh the hat now. And I'm just like, I need to weigh the leftover yarn is what I need to do.
So if you are using, let's say, 1 skein of the wool is thick and quick, and you know you get 1 hat out of that, like no matter what size you're making, you're still putting how much yarn you need? Or you can just say 1 skein of this?
Ideally, yes. If you're using almost a whole skein, go for 1 skein is fine. But if you're making a newborn hat and you know that you could have, like, the thing is, if you do that, it allows people, I have a scrap of this. Good, I have enough to make this hat. Let me make it.
That's true.
I hate when they don't do that. Like, they don't specify that, especially for smaller amounts of yarn. Because, like, we all have yarn stashes. We all have a gajillion.
And she looks around my office. Yes. We all have yarn stashes.
We all have, like, a gajillion, like... I've started on this ball of yarn but then use the rest of it.
Yeah.
And like projects that tell you how much yardage you need allow you to use the leftovers instead of having them sit on your shelf for 14,000 years and then donating them somewhere when you're tired of seeing them, you know? Yes, as we all do. So yardage, very important. Tools, every single one needs to be included.
Yeah, you need to tell everybody.
Down to the scissors, to... everything.
Yeah, in one of my patterns, I think it's the first one of the chunky blankets that I did. Now I'm just obsessed making chunky blankets. I'm sorry for everybody. You know, I'm gonna continue, but I showed the yarn needle, and I also showed how to join the yarns together. And so people were like, well, see, if you're joining the yarn together, why do you need the darning needle? And I'm like, well, because you have...
At the beginning
at the end, yarn to weave in, you know?
Yeah.
And they were like, oh, okay. I'm like, I have to show it.
You have to, yes. You have to include everything. And
even if you use it like a teeny tiny bit, you
yeah,
need to
think about someone is leaving on a trip, looking at that list, and needs to have absolutely everything they need to make it.
Yeah.
If you leave without your darning needle, like, I mean, it's not the end of the world, but you still cannot finish your project 100%.
Yeah.
Those ends are going to stay.
Yeah.
And one thing too, like if you're specifying stitch markers, especially if there's multiple because you're doing,
Different
something
things.
that has a repeat or a sweater that has increases or whatever, patterns that write how many stitch markers you need are amazing.
Yeah.
I've came across patterns that are like 5 stitch marker of one color and 3 stitch marker of another color because you're marking different things. And I was like, this is so amazing.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And then they tell you which to put where, and it makes everything simpler.
Yeah.
So the more details you give always makes it easier and always brings you less questions.
Oh, yeah. Next, we have the gauge.
Yes. Extremely important. We've talked about this before. We all hate it.
Yeah.
But we all need it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's what's going to make your project great.
Yep. I already said this before, but it happened to me. To this day, I have people saying, oh, this is not the right size hat. How is this an adult hat? Like, it won't even fit my 6 months old. And it's like, what? Are you using the right tools, the right needle, the right yarn? And also, did you gauge? Because maybe you're making it, small.
You crochet super tight or yeah.
It happens with my blanket, too. Another girl was saying, I'm crocheting the same amount. I have the same yarn. I have the same hook. And I feel like my blanket is so small. And I'm like, did you check the gauge? Because maybe I crochet, and I know I crochet loose.
Yes, compared to me, you crochet very loose.
Exactly. So I'm like, did you check the gauge? Because maybe you're crocheting way tighter than I do, and yes, you're gonna have a smaller blanket.
Yeah. So in that case, you need to up your hook size so that you can make up for that difference.
Yeah. So gauge is super important.
Yes, and typically gauge is given 4 inch by 4 inch, and please include what stitch to put your gauge in. Yeah. If your pattern has more than one stitch, if your pattern has only the one stitch, that's fine. That's the default one that is going to be in the gauge.
Yeah.
But if your pattern has more than one stitch, you need to include where
what
it's
stitch,
at.
Yeah.
If you're doing a hat that has, a knit one, purl one brim and whatever type of stitch for the rest of the hat, there's 2 types of stitch. Is the gauge on the brim? Is the gauge on the hat? I don't know if you don't tell me. So very important to specify that as well.
Next,
abbreviations.
This is like the knitting and crochet
code.
Yeah.
That makes other people be like, what is this?
What
it's another language.
reading?
It's Chinese.
Yeah.
And we're like, no, it's just knitting and crochet.
Yeah.
You're going to have beginner knitters, even if your patterns are more advanced. Some people have the guts to be like, I'm going to start with this intermediate pattern and I'm going to figure it out. And abbreviations are super helpful. And even if you come across a new stitch that you haven't worked, I still come across new stitches that I haven't done before. And even sometimes in patterns, it will say like do a bobble. There's a gajillion different ways to do bobbles. Yeah. So like the abbreviation and a little explanation of how that stitch is done is amazing to like help you.
And also specify if it's using US terms or UK. I think they use double crochet. It's different than single crochet.
Yeah, their double crochets are single crochet, I think, or something like that. Everything's like doubled.
Yeah, something like that. So also specify which one it is, because if somebody that's from the UK is buying your pattern, maybe they will assume that is and be very confused. Yeah, and then be like, what is this?
Yes.
So that's important too.
And the next part,
the pattern itself,
the most important part, which we can't help you with how to write because it depends on what you're doing.
Yeah.
But basically, you need to write down every single step of every single thing you've ever done in this pattern.
The more details, the better. But also, like, I have a pattern that is, I'm not gonna say what it is because I don't want to give it away. But a pattern that I bought last year. And it's just so long for something so simple. I'm like, it's ridiculously simple. And the pattern is like, I'm written not lying, like 8 pages.
Jesus.
For a hat.
Oh.
Specifically a bonnet. I'm just gonna
leave it there. I know which one.
I'm gonna leave it there. And I'm like, why do you need so much? Just tell me what I need to do. I don't want to, because then you're trying to figure it out.
Then it's confusing. If you put too much information, it's just as confusing as if you didn't put enough.
Yeah.
And this goes back to the conversation we had last week. This is where you get pattern testers and you get tech editors and you get, other people that that knit and crochet take a look at your pattern, because those are the people that will be like, okay, this is too much. Okay, this is not enough. Yeah. Like, this makes sense.
I remember one time I don't know if it was you or if it was Katrina, and I was writing a pattern, and one of you two told me, because I put, like, there was a repeat, like a sequence of like 2 rows maybe, or 2 rounds for one of my hats, and I was writing it.
Like, row 1, do this. Row 2, do this. And row
then,
3, copy row 1.
Exactly. Like, I put the same in all the rows, and I can't remember if it was you or her. You were like, nope, just put from row 1 to 2, whatever, do
repeat this many times.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I thought it was not that obvious. I'm like,
because you're gearing your patterns more towards beginner, like, it can be helpful when it's fully written out, because they can scratch it out as they go.
Yeah.
Whereas if it's like repeat row 1 and 2 10 times, like 10 more times for a total of 11 times, you're like, okay, wait, where am I? Like, you know what I mean? So for beginners, and I've known beginners who have literally wrote out an entire pattern, like kind of what you were doing. Row 1, this. Row 2, this. Okay, then I have to repeat it, and they figure out everything and write it all down so that they can scratch as they go, and it's easy.
Yeah.
But most of us, and people, as soon as like they've done a few patterns, don't typically need to continue doing that. So then it just becomes a lot of information for nothing.
Yeah.
Give me row 1 and 2, repeat how many times, and it's perfect.
Yeah.
One thing that I can say for patterns that is, I find incredibly helpful, that not everyone does, is if you're increasing and or decreasing, add the row count or the stitch count at the end.
Yeah.
Because it's so easy to get lost or to miss one thing. And so if every time you change and you go up or down in the amount of stitches, you write it in brackets at the end of that row, you can quickly double check yourself. If you're feeling confident, you go a couple rows and you're like, yeah, now I'm going to double check, Yeah. And it's so helpful, and it helps people have the proper result.
Yeah. Yeah, and then we have pictures. And here I have a question.
Okay.
Do you like, or do you prefer pictures that are next to what you're doing, or you like the see picture number 3 and then having to scroll all the way down and
please,
check?
If you're doing a tutorial, split your little sentences and put them under the pictures so that we can see, read, understand.
Yeah.
It gets confusing, especially if it's printed. It's not bad because it's easy to swing back and forth. If you're on your phone or on your laptop or iPad, you're scrolling, and then you get so confused. So no, definitely pictures, words, same page, please.
Yeah, same. That happens to me whenever I'm looking at a pattern, like you said, in my phone, and then you're scrolling down. Okay, picture number whatever 3, and then go up again, and then go down again. It's like, I'm just like, then I just get so overwhelmed. I'm like, okay, that's enough. Like I
know why they do it. Like sometimes for the look of the pattern, it's easier that way. But the practicality of the user dictates otherwise. And I think in pictures, I think it's nice too to have some pictures where it's in progress, some pictures where it's finished, some picture where it's worn. Like, have a variety of your pictures.
Sometimes showing the stitch too, or where to place the hook, or the needle or the knitting needle. Yeah. Things like that are helpful, especially if it's, well, I think in every kind of pattern, the more difficult the pattern it is, the more pictures you would need and you would appreciate too, because
one thing I really like for pictures, and some patterns do this, if you give alternative yarns, or if like if you've worked it or done it in different yarns, or even not in just the yarn specified in the pattern, writing which colorway.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you're like, oh, okay, this is thick and quick. That's great. but I don't know, is this like this one or this one?
Is this butterscotch or mustard?
Exactly. And you're like, ooh, I don't know. And then meanwhile, they're from the States and they have access to a color that we don't have and we'll never get. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's always nice when people will specify, like, not necessarily in the materials, because you don't need to pick the butterscotch like they did. But, you know, like a little note, like, you know,
under
the pictures and the patterns are in colorway butterscotch. And you're like, okay, cool.
Yeah,
you know?
that's a great
I think that's always like such a nice little touch.
Just a little details.
A little extra, you know, a little touch. And if you have, you know, sometimes pictures in 2 different colorways or 2 different yarns, then specifying that as well. And then you're like, okay, like Alicia has one pattern that's made with the wool by We Are Knitters. And then she gives the alternative of Thick and Quick. And if you look at it, like she'll say, like, you know, this one is made with this one and this one is made with this one. Nice. So you can visually kind of see the difference between both of them. And then you know the colorways and everything too. And I just thought that was such a good idea.
And it just makes the pattern reading experience so much better. You know,
because you're like, this designer really thought of everything. This is great, you know? And we have a few other little things that we came, like, that are extras that you don't need to have, but are so nice when you do.
Yeah, they would make, you know, your pattern nicer. Level. Nicer.
And also, like, especially if you're paying for a pattern or a more simple pattern, the more details and extras it has, the more you're like, okay, this designer really cared and, you know, gave me everything that they could give me with this. This is so useful. It was well worth my money. You know?
Also, you want that in order to get reviews.
Yes.
You know, like, people will be happier and they will have a better experience when you have a very nice pattern, and then they will reflect that in the reviews.
Yeah.
So the little extra ones that we have.
Notes is the first one, kind of like what I was saying, what color it is, you know, alternative yarns. You can also include, what I find is great is to make this hat bigger or to make this smaller. Like, this obviously won't work on a sweater, but on things that are pretty repetitive, a blanket or, you know, a hat or whatever, where sometimes, you know, you have a bigger head than the standard, and the standard little hat might usually feel a little small on you, so you might want to add a few stitches. So having a little note that tells you this repeat is made, you know, 5 stitches plus 2, then it gives you that opportunity if you want to change the size. You're still using the pattern. You still have all the information, but you have that. And even I've seen it even for sweaters and stuff where, like, in the body, depending on if there's shaping or whatever, they'll be like, if you want to add length, this is where you do it. You know what I mean? So those are always fun because it allows you to have a fit that fits you better, that you'll be happier with, and therefore a greater pattern overall.
If you are making a crochet pattern, the crochet diagram is always so helpful, especially for people that knows how to read a diagram. They can do it way faster. Like, I can read this stitch way faster if I see it on a diagram than if I'm reading the actual step-by-step. Like, do not give me step-by-step. I want the diagram.
Okay. I don't think I've worked enough with diagrams to be able to say that I would, like, understand them.
Really?
Better. Yeah, most patterns that I've done crochet didn't have a diagram.
Wow.
Or they did, but I didn't quite know what they meant.
Oh my gosh.
I'm sure if I, like, started but because you make them too, I feel like once you make them, you have to understand them.
I love making
I wouldn't
diagrams.
know. Okay, can I ask, how do you make them? Like, is there an app or do you...
There is a program that I downloaded. It's called Crochet Chart.
Okay.
Very basic. It is not the easiest to learn, but once you get the hang of it, it's pretty straightforward. You need to know what the stitches are and then how to place them. I think the hardest thing of doing the diagram is how to place them, because the program is so, how do I say it, sensitive, that whenever you just tweak a little bit, it just moves twists the stitch right away, and you want to have it like even, straight, the rows perfect. So it takes a little bit of practice to get it like looking nice. But I've seen other people use Procreate. It's an app that you can buy for like $8 or $10 on your iPad, and they can do it because you can make the stitch. Let's say you can make a line, and then the program will make it perfectly straight. You know, so you can actually make the nice looking stitches very perfect. And yeah, that's the program that I use, and I love it. I still use it. I have an iPad, I have Procreate, but I still prefer to use it in my computer. And
yeah, once you've learned it and you're good with it, then
yeah. And like I said to you, I think last week, that now, even before crocheting something, I do the diagram first to see if the stitch is gonna match with
and line up with how you want,
line up with everything, especially when I want to put like different stitches. And it's just, I don't know, it's just opened a whole new world for me.
Yeah,
like,
for sure. I can imagine that.
So much better, because then you know it's gonna line up perfectly. Now you just have to crochet and see if you like how it looks.
Yeah,
you know. But
you might have to teach me crochet diagrams.
Yeah, I love it. Like, I cannot read. It's not that I can. Of course I can. But if you give me the diagram, I'm just my eyes are gonna instantly go to the diagram, and I'm like, okay.
And then you understand it. You're like, okay, cool.
Next,
hashtag and or contact email. Like we mentioned earlier in previous episodes, it's always helpful if you can find a hashtag, look at other people's project, kind of see how it is, and therefore like reach out to other people too, possibly. And the contact email, if you can reach out to the designer if you have a question, if something doesn't work. I've had like people message me, especially for my temperature blanket, with like, hey, this color is discontinued, can you help me find a replacement, because I don't have it, so I can't. So like I've gone to Michael's and compared with other colors and was like, hey, this is the closest I think this would be good. And like, so like having a contact email, whether you have a question, you're unsure how to do things, whether it's always helpful. And typically as a designer, you should expect questions, and you should be willing to and wanting to respond to people. Because it's always nice if you're unsure what to do, you reach out and they get back to you. You're like, okay, great, this is good. Yeah,
for me, I try to answer as many questions as I possibly can, because I get so many, especially on YouTube, on my Instagram as well. Facebook, to be honest, I'm sad to say that I do not check the inbox at all, because it's just too much. With YouTube, with Instagram, it's just, it's too much. So I answer on Instagram, but for people that have bought my patterns, I have a unique email address that it's written in the pattern for them to reach out to me if they need questions. And like I was telling you before, if I see that I have an email in that inbox, I'm going to answer right away, because it's somebody that bought my pattern that has a question.
And they're possibly stuck not knowing what to do.
So whenever they are paying for something, it's not that I don't pay attention to the people, you know, that are looking at my blog or my videos that are for free. I do. It's just there's so many more that I just tend to, you know, respond as quickly as if you bought my pattern and you're writing an email.
Do it as quickly as you can, but you prioritize people that have obviously paid for it.
Exactly.
Absolutely. That makes sense.
And the last thing is what you were saying, yarn substitutions.
Yes. If you have worked your pattern in, like, we all know super bulky yarn are super bulky yarns, but there's a wide range of super bulky yarns. You can't interchange one for the other always. It doesn't always work. So, and we talked about this in other episodes too, but you know, giving alternative is always great, especially if you're using fancier yarn or more expensive yarn. If you can also give an alternative for a budget yarn, reaches so many more people and makes it so much easier for so many people to get it. So it's always fun when those are like noted in the pattern too. And I've seen it done as, you know, this yarn or any other super bulky yarn such as, and then they give you a few. And I've also seen people where they've had pattern testers, like groups of pattern testers I've been in, and in the pattern they're like, this is the recommended yarn, but pattern testers have had successful result with, and then gave a list of other yarns. Nice. So that's super nice, and it's a great way to be able to kind of see how your project would look in different yarns too, if you don't want to remake it 1,000 times in different yarns. Like the pattern tester, allowing them to use different yarns can be very helpful in that. It can be like a double-edged sword, because if they don't use the exact yarn, it's not going to be exactly the same result. But if you have some people that do the same yarn and some people that don't, then it kind of gives you the option to be like, other people have had good results with these yarns. So yeah,
that's always good.
Yeah.
So that was today's episode. I hope you guys enjoyed this information. This was a very good
like information packed episode.
Information episode. Yeah.
Plus, we talked about this last week, and then Danny failed to publish on time, but she has a template that she's working on publishing.
It's gonna be live tomorrow, for sure. So by the time they
listen to this episode, so we will put the link this time because it will be live. But she created a template so that you can take notes while you're working on your pattern or designing it, and those notes will be very helpful in helping you write all these categories and fill in all this information in your patterns. So,
and like I said before too, it just makes it so easy, because it happens to me. I have so many little notebooks here and there, and then I go somewhere and I'm like, I'm sure I have the notes for this pattern in here, and it wasn't there. And also sometimes I'm looking at something that I wrote and I'm like, I can't even understand what I was trying to do. Like, what was I even trying to do? I don't even know. What's the gauge? What yarn was I using? What hook? Like, I just don't know. So I think like this template, it's I'm using it already. Like, it's very, very helpful. So yeah, I hope that will help you guys as well to keep, track of everything when writing a pattern. Obviously, this is for people that write patterns.
Yes.
So designers or,
But it can also be helpful, actually, if you're doing patterns from other people and, you don't match gauge perfectly, so you have to change your hook size or you're changing the yarn. It could be like a good way to take notes on what you've done to make the pattern happen.
Absolutely.
Especially, if the yarn isn't available in your country, so you're using a different yarn and you're modifying it or whatever, that could just be
that's
great too. So we'll put the link to that planner or template or whatever in the description. And
I hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and please remember, if you are listening on YouTube, you can leave all your comments down below, and if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Google Podcasts, please leave us 5-star reviews, because that helps us a lot.
Have a great week, everyone.
Have a great weekend. Bye.